what the government wants you to think about is that how can you actually save up more money, or more importantly, how do you actually spend your money more wisely, and probably even think about how to increase your income so as to be able to afford a property much more comfortably. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Property Talk Show. And today's episode we'll be talking about the latest cooling measures imposed on the property market by the Singapore government. So first and foremost, why do we even have to implement these cooling measures in the first place? In the last 2 years, the COVID-19 pandemic had impacted the whole world, changing the way we live, disrupting many industries and affecting global economy. However, for the local Singapore property market, we realized that the property market was thriving and remained resilient in the last 2 years. So this is where, in terms of the pricing wise, be it for new launches or for private resale and HDB resale, we have seen new price highs in a lot of places. So this is when the government had to step in and to cool down the property market so as to make sure that the property market remained a very healthy and safe place for buyers to actually buy properties in. So let's go into each and every one of these cooling measures, and let's talk about why did the government implement this and how this could impact you. So first and foremost, the very first cooling measure that was implemented is a very big major one, which is the total debt servicing ratio, also known as TDSR, has been revised from 60% to 55%. Now first and foremost, what is this 60% and 55% thing about? Now, TDSR was actually first implemented in 2013, also as one of the cooling measures to prevent buyers from taking too much loan for the property. So this is where the 60% refers to the amount of your monthly salary that is being used to determine the loan eligibility. So in the past, it used to be 60%, and now with these new measures, it is now 55% of your monthly income that will be used to determine your loan eligibility. So to put up a very straightforward example, today if you have a $10,000 combined income, your loan used to be 1.33 million maximum based on the 60% TDSR, but now with the 55% TDSR, your max loan is 1.22 million. So that is a reduction of 110,000 when it comes to your loan. So when it comes to the buyers today, this key change will mean that in the past, maybe you wanted to go for a 1.6 million property, now you have to back down and go towards a 1.5 million property. So that will actually reduce the affordability and therefore reducing the options in the market. So why does the government want to do this? Now, one of the key things here is to make sure that buyers do not over leverage and stretch themselves too much to the maximum of their loan limit. Right? So by reducing it to 55%, the government can be more assured that buyers will have a lot more room in terms of the affordability, whereby in terms of the monthly installment, it will not be so much of a burden or a stress to the buyers. Okay, so if you're a buyer and looking to buy a property in the market today, this is where I think it's a good thing, because it is reminding you that, hey, if you're feeling stretched, don't go ahead. Only go ahead if you know that the monthly installment is going to be very comfortable for you to afford. Now, when it comes to the second cooling measure, this is more on the ABSD, right? Additional buyer stamp duties. So for the ABSD, it has been tweaked across the board, be it for Singaporeans, PRs, or foreigners, and even for companies and entities. Okay, so let's go into each and every one of them. Now, firstly, for Singaporeans and PRs, right? Your first property, there is no change, right, in terms of the current structure. But for the second property onwards, there will be major changes. So for the second property for Singaporeans, the ABSD have been increased by 5% from 12 to 17. Right? So now if you want to buy a second property, it's 17% ABSD on top of the purchase price. Okay? For the third property, it's even more drastic. Okay, they increase a 10% increment from 15% to 25% now. Okay, so that is for the third property. For PRs, your first property still remains at 5%, no change. But for the second property, instead of 15%, it is now 25%. So that is a super big jump, right? So for PRs thinking of owning their second property, it is even more tougher now. Then for the third property, it is revised from 15% to 30%. So once again, the government is making it very clear that for PRs, they are reducing your privilege and making sure that you do not make it so easily to own 2 or 3 properties or more. And then now when it comes to the foreigners, across the board, the ABSD have been increased from 20% to 30%. So that's a 10% increment. Be it whether it is for the foreigners' first property, second or third or more, it is still a flat 30% for the ABSD. So first and foremost, why does the government want to implement this? Is because they had the foresight to foresee that very soon there will be more foreign interest in our property market. So why is that so? Is because for the last 2 years, the world have been watching how Singapore handle the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as how we protect our economy and how our property market is doing. So clearly in the last 2 years, our economy have been pretty stable, and in terms of the property market, they have been very thriving and been very resilient. So that is where a lot of foreigners are already waiting to come back into Singapore to invest in our properties. So as the travel border starts to open up more and more, the government realized that they must implement this now before more foreigners start to come in and buy properties in Singapore. So this is the main reason why we have seen this increment from 20% to 30% of ABSD for foreigners. And last but not least, for companies and entities, we have seen another 10% ABSD jump from 25% to 35% now. Okay, so of course, this is for people who are buying properties as a company. It will be tougher for you now, and even more so for developers as well, right? Because developers are also considered as entities and companies. So for developers, instead of 25%, they have to pay 35% down, plus an additional 5% non-reversible ABSD, making it a lump sum of 40% upfront for any land that they purchase, be it from the government land sales or be it through an en bloc collective sale. Now, first and foremost, the main reason why the government is doing this, I believe it is to deter the developers from going ahead with mega en bloc for collective sale, right? So this is where, imagine this, alright, if you're going for a en bloc collective sale as a developer, originally you already had to pay a 25% plus a non-reversible 5%, so that's 30%. Now it is 40% upfront. So this will stop developers from going ahead with en bloc and collective sale of mega big land plots. So the key change here is that for developers, if they were thinking of going ahead with bigger land plots for en bloc, they will now have to think twice, because with this 10% increment, this will mean that they will have to actually fork out probably hundreds of millions more than expected, right? Which is not what they want. So this is where the government is very smart, right? They want to make sure that developers will take a step back and not go ahead with all these mega land sites for en bloc, and they will actually turn towards government land sales instead and take up smaller land plots on offer. Okay, so first and foremost, why does the government want to do this? I don't think that the government is trying to monopolize the market. However, I do believe that the government is trying to prevent a huge influx of en bloc millionaires from coming into the resale market or the new launch market. Right? Because back then in 2017 and 2018, during the last en bloc fevers, there were a lot of homeowners who became overnight millionaires, and they pumped the money back into the resale market as well as the new launch market to diversify their investment. And this is where we have seen pricing going up with a whole new benchmark prices, and thereby I believe this is what the government do not want to repeat again. Right? So with lesser en bloc millionaires, we will not see so much money get pumped back into the property market. So I believe this is one of the very smart moves by the government to actually control the property market and to make sure that it is a much more healthy place for all of us. Alright, so the government, good job on this. Now last but not least, alright, it is the last cooling measure, which is the loan to value, also known as LTV for HDB loans. Right? This is for HDB loans, not for bank loans, okay? If you're taking a bank loan for HDB, there is no change. The LTV is still 75%. However, today if you're looking to take a HDB loan for a HDB flat, the LTV is now 85% instead of 90% maximum, right? So the biggest impact will be on first-timer home buyers who are buying your BTOs. Okay, because for traditionally a lot of first-timer buyers do not have a lot of CPF, and they do not have a lot of cash savings as well. So which is why a lot of first-timer buyers, especially the younger generation buyers, they are leveraging a lot on HDB loan to help them to be able to afford a HDB flat. Okay, so as a result of this revision in the LTV, a lot of first-timer buyers may have to either postpone their purchase plans or they will have to actually downsize. Meaning to say that today, originally you might be thinking of buying a 5-room flat, right? But because of this new change, you are being forced to actually go down to a 4-room flat instead because you're no longer able to take up as much loan as you used to before. Okay? Otherwise, you would have to actually consider postponing your purchase plans, maybe by 2 or 3 years, because you need the time to accumulate more CPF so that you can actually have more cash and CPF down and to take a lesser loan. Okay? So in terms of for the resale market, I think it is not going to have a tremendous impact because in the first place, a lot of buyers do not take up to the full 90% HDB loan. Right? A lot of buyers are taking a 70% to at most 80% because the rest of the down payment, most buyers tend to use their CPF and it is usually sufficient for them so that they don't have to take a full 90% loan. Right? So the only people that I really feel that will be impacted is mainly the first-timer buyers. So of course, coming to the end of these 3 cooling measures that I just mentioned, now let's talk about something interesting that I have noticed. Alright, is that when it comes to all these cooling measures, what is the key message that the government is trying to drive at? The key message here across all the cooling measures is telling us that today, if you're feeling stretched, don't buy a property. Right? What the government wants you to think about is that how can you actually save up more money, or more importantly, how do you actually spend your money more wisely and probably even think about how to increase your income so as to be able to afford a property much more comfortably. Okay, so this is where I agree with this line of thinking, is that today, in order to buy a property and be very, very comfortable, you have to have the basic affordability. So it's all about how much cash and CPF you have. It's also about how much income do you earn so as to be able to be eligible for the loan required for the property you want. And this is where in today's market, I believe these 3 words is going to be even more important, right? And these 3 words is that cash is king, right? Why do I say cash is king? It's because if you realize in all of these cooling measures, buyers who are able to fork out more cash upfront are not as affected. Especially those people who even have the ability to buy a property paying in full cash, right? In fact, in Singapore, I've seen many buyers who are able to do that, and that is a good news for all these buyers because they are not as affected by these cooling measures. So I believe a lot of you might also be thinking, will cooling measures cause property prices to go down? Well, with regards to this, I truly think that this is not really a big measure that will impact the whole market so much. Because when it comes to, for example, the ABSD, in the first place, a lot of people are already not so, inclined to pay 12%, right, for the second property for Singaporeans. So even though it's 70%, it is not going to make a huge difference to the perception of ABSD in today's market. Okay, and then when it comes to the TDSR, although it is a little bit significant, but then again, the market will eventually adapt. So all we need to do is just to look back into the last time the government implemented cooling measures. Right? On the 5th of July in 2018, the government changed the ABSD as well, increasing all the ABSD by 5% across the board, and also changed the loan to value from 80% to 75% max loan. So look at what happened to the property market is that the overall market trend only dipped down for a few months, but subsequently it still continued to pick up. And why is that so? It's because for the first few months, many buyers were hesitant and were unsure about the impact that it would have on the market. And that's pretty normal, right? Any buyer at this point of time would suddenly just jam brake and say, hey, let's put this on hold and let's observe the market for a few months more. So what happened is that true enough, right, for the few months the market was kind of on a standstill, it kind of dropped down for a bit. But what happened is that shortly after, the market continued to pick up. And as we have seen in the last 2 years, right, we have seen a lot of new benchmark prices being set. And this is where, in terms of these cooling measures, I truly believe that it will only have a very minimal impact on the market for maybe a short few months. But subsequently, we will still see new price high, be it in the resale market and the new launch market. And this is where I believe the key reason here, alright, is this keyword. Is that the market will adapt, right? The keyword is adapt. So, in the past 10 years, okay, we have seen the property market go through so many rounds of cooling measures, and yet each and every time, the market adapted. So this is why today, if you're looking to buy a property, trust me that if you do not enter soon enough, probably a few months later, you will start to see the market still continue to go up, and that is where you might be thinking, wow, I'm being left behind again. So this is where, this is just my personal opinion. So whether you agree or disagree with me, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and also let me know, right? Are you being affected by any of the cooling measures? So if yes, then what is the measure that impacted you and how? Alright, I would love to hear from you, and I may even feature your comment in my next video. And of course, don't forget to also like my video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also click on the notification bell so as to be notified whenever I have a new content. So this is the end of this episode of the Property Talk Show, and I look forward to see you around in the next video.